Thanks for joining us. The days are shorter, the nights are colder, the leaves are falling, so that can only mean that Halloween is right around the corner. Now here at our theater at IVCC, for the better part of 12 years, we've done a show called Terror in the Aisles with very talented casts over the years, with the stories original, written by Dr. David Allen Keister and Tricia Kelly, and even some of the students along the way. Tonight, as you can see, our theater is pretty empty, as is the stage. And so we decided to take this option. Now, I want you to know that everything was followed in accordance to the CDC guidelines. The performers were filmed individually, and we maintained a very safe distance. It was odd, but we're doing what we can in these unusual times. So we thank you for tuning in and watching Terror in the Aisles, a different kind. So the best way to watch this show, I'm thinking, while you're at home, is to grab something to eat and turn out the lights and sit back, relax, and have some good Halloween fun with us with Terror in the Aisles here. There's someone behind me, isn't there?
Hush your bye and good night. Close your eyes and start dreaming. Pay no mind to the sound of the others who are screaming. They're all gone, dead and gone. They were bad little children. They all cried and they lied. So I finally had to kill them. Some I burned, some I drowned, or dismembered with sharp knives. So you hush now and be good, and you might escape with your life.
A girl heard her mom yell her name from downstairs, so she got up and started to go down. As she got to the stairs, her mom pulled her into her room and said, "I heard that too."
I never go to sleep, but I keep waking up.
I woke up to hear knocking on glass. I thought it was from the window until I realized it was from the mirror.
She asked me why I was breathing so heavily. I wasn't.
I begin tucking him into bed, and he looks up at me and says, "Daddy, you check for monsters under my bed?" So I do so to humor him. I look under his bed, and I see him staring up at me, quivering. "Daddy, there's something on my bed."
My daughter won't stop crying and screaming in the middle of the night. I visit her grave and ask her to stop, but it doesn't help.
They delivered the mannequins in bubble wrap shortly before closing. As I was locking up, I began to hear popping.
You know how every area has its local folklore, Doc? In LaSalle, they have the ghosts of Al Capone's goons. In Seneca, you have the DuPont monster. Well, north of Marseilles, out in the woods, we have Louis. My neighbor's dad, Ron, told all the neighborhood kids about Louis. Louis used to be a kid just like we were. Louis went off into the woods by himself and fell into a ravine. He hit his head on a rock and he became a feral, violent person. He hunted down children who misbehaved or went off into the woods by themselves in true 80s horror movie fashion, with a mask and a chainsaw. We all knew the stories weren't true, but in the back of our developing brains, Louis was always there as a warning that there was something out in those woods, something dangerous. One Halloween night in high school, a bunch of us all ventured to my friend's treehouse out in the woods for a little game of truth or dare. It was Halloween. We were all teenagers. We had hormones. there were questionable decisions made. Things were getting interesting when we moved on to the risky Double Dare round. And my buddy Mike was super excited because he just got dared to touch his first boob, over the shirt, of course. And that's when we heard it. We moved so quickly. You have never seen teenagers jump out of treehouse that quickly. I helped the girls get onto the ladder. A few of the guys jumped the 15 feet and hit the ground running. Mike, who went from yay boobs to I'm gonna die in less than half a second, clung to a branch and cried. And me, with what must have been a death wish, stood my ground to confront the assailant. It was Louis. I swore it was Louis. It had a mask on, just like Ron described. He started moving towards me. I froze, unable to scream. As he moved closer, I stumbled backward and hit the ground. He leaned over me, and he whispered, "It's me, Ron. Pretend to die." So I did what I hope anyone in my position would do. I smiled and screamed like bloody hell. Ron had taken the chain off of his chainsaw and he mock mangled me. It was great! The chorus of the screams grew louder and louder as I screamed. It was so great that it became a Halloween tradition. Without the truth or dare portion, of course. Every year, we'd invite the neighborhood as well as friends and family to Ron's house, and every year, Ron would come out of the woods, dressed as Louis, with the bladeless chainsaw. And every year, he would kill me, as we scared the bejesus out of anybody who wasn't already in on it. Except for last year. Last year was very different, Doc. I had announced that I would be going out of state to get my master's degree and thus wouldn't be able to play the part of the first victim. That was when my 9-year-old neighbor, Adam, asked if he could take my place so he could scare his friends from school. Ron and I were overjoyed, but that, the tradition would continue into the next generation. So we practiced, and the big night came, and Adam invited all of his little friends. He was so excited. It started getting dark, so I sat down next to him and we started telling the kids the story of Louis, the pharaoh boy who got lost in the woods. We had just gotten to the good part, and that's when Ron came in. We all started running away. Adam went to stand his ground. I looked back to see how they were doing and stopped dead in my tracks. I couldn't explain it, but I knew that wasn't Ron. That person had blood on their clothes, and there was definitely still a chain on that chainsaw. I didn't think. I ran towards Adam, but Doc, I wasn't fast enough. I heard a scream. I saw blood. So much blood. And pieces of Adam. And all I saw after that was red. And here's the kicker, Doc. The name of the tweaker who killed Ron and Adam, the cop said his name was Louis. What a horrible coincidence. The prosecutor said that it was a clear case of self-defense. I know I don't regret killing that man. But, Doc, you gotta help me. Meds aren't working anymore, and I can't sleep. I can't stop thinking about it. Adam and Ron are gone, and I'm alive, and there's nothing to do about it. I just keep hearing it. There's screams. Adam screams, and that chainsaw.
hate it when my brother Charles has to go away. My parents always explain to me how sick he is, that I am lucky enough to have his brain chemicals function the way they're supposed to. I complain that I'm bored without a brother to play with, and they tell me that his boredom is probably worse since he's now locked up in an asylum, caged in a darkened room. I always beg them to give him another chance, and for a while, they did. And every time Charlie comes home, they find some neighbor's cat in a toy box, eyes gouged out, spine crushed. Or they'll find Dad's razor in a baby play area at the park across the street. Once, Mom found her heart pills replaced with bits of dishwasher tablets. He doesn't get to come home much anymore, and I hate it when Charlie has to go away. It makes me have to pretend to be good until he comes back.
My 3-year-old daughter spent all afternoon at a neighbor's birthday party. My wife picked her up, and when they both got home, they were exhausted. They fell asleep at 8 o'clock. I stayed up watching Netflix, fell asleep in the chair. I could hear my daughter creeping up to me at midnight, tugged gently on my sleeve and said, "Daddy, guess how old I'm gonna be next month?" I looked at her and smiled and said, "I don't know, honey. How old are you gonna be?" She held up 4 fingers. It's now 6:30 in the morning. My wife and I have been up with her all night. She still won't tell us where she got them.
I had the dream again. Same one. Same dream every night for the past week. I had it again. Tonight. Started off the same way. The street is damp. I am walking. It's dark. Fog is rolling at my feet. I walk past the old town square, past the schoolyard. I hear rustling all around me. I took the shortcut through the cemetery hill. I am stopped in my tracks by the thunderous sound of a flock of birds taking flight into the night sky. Then silence. Dead silence. The only sound is the sound of my feet crushing dead leaves on the stone path. The sound of the smashing leaves becomes louder and louder. I stop. The sound continues. Feet on leaves all around me, louder, closer, from all directions. I begin to run through the woods, down the street. I run until I see the light of your front porch. I catch my breath on the front porch step. 1, 2. I am then frozen by the growling sounds of muddled screams. I rush in the door to find you. It's the same dream every night. The same panic, same sounds. The only difference tonight is I'm not dreaming.
When the night is cloudy and mists hang on the hill, there are dark and ghostly footsteps and voices thin and shrill. Nothing will your looking show you in the dark if the door is open, but hearken, hearken, hark. In the hours of darkness, thronging from their camp, dark and ghostly goblins flicker by the lamp. Listen to their laughter as they flicker by the lamp. When the rain is falling and the night is bleak, something moves the knocker and makes the hinges creak. Sometimes in the window a waving shadow falls. Sometimes clammy whispers echo through the halls. They lure you with sweet voices when you should be in bed. Something creaks behind you. Something creaks ahead. Something gazes at you from behind a tree, but if you look around you, nothing will you see. In the hours of darkness, thronging from their camp, dark and ghostly goblins flicker by the lamp. Listen to their laughter as they flicker by the lamp.
I can't sleep, she whispered, crawling into bed with me. I woke up cold, clutching the dress she was buried in.
The grinning face stared at me from the bedroom window. I live on the 14th floor.
There was a picture of me sleeping in my phone. I live alone.
The last thing I saw was my alarm clock flashing 12:07. As she thrust her rotting nails through my chest, her other hand muffling my screams. I sat bolt upright, relieved that it was just a dream, until I saw my alarm clock flashing 12:06 as my closet door creaked open.
I always thought my cat had a staring problem. She was always fixated on my face. Until one day, when I realized she was looking right behind me.
In all the time I've lived alone in this house, I swear to God, I've closed more doors than I've opened.
I can't move, breathe, speak, or hear, and it's so dark all the time. If I knew it would have been this lonely, I would have been cremated instead.
There comes a point in every woman's life when the sexy costume is just no longer an option. Georgia looked in the full-length mirror and sighed. Hoodie, jeans, and sneakers just don't have the same effect, she thought. From behind her, she heard the shuffling of feet. She turned to see 10 children lined up like soldiers, each dressed in a black and white skeleton costume. Their skull masks covered their faces, and each carried a plastic pumpkin candy pail. It would be nearly impossible to discern their ages, if not for the differences in their height. Now remember, children, we stay together. No running ahead or lagging behind. I'll make you all hold hands if you don't behave. Got it? It was the same speech every year. They all nodded silently in agreement. And what do you say? Trick or treat, they answered. They were good children, Georgia thought. Every last one of them. She pulled the hood of her cloak further over her head and opened the door, letting the 10 children file out in front of her. Georgia lived on Leland Street, so their route would take them north on Leland, over to Danvers Street, south, and back up Leland. It would be a long walk for some of the children, but the promise of treats would be worth it. It was their one big outing every year, and Georgia did not want them to be deprived of it. From all around, children could be heard laughing and scampering about, shouting, "Trick or treat," and rustling pails and bags of candy. Georgia's children watched without saying a word. The first house was dark. Georgia rang the bell anyway. Her 10 skeleton-faced children stood on the porch steps, waiting, silent. When Georgia rang the bell again, a stooping old man swung the door open and growled, "You'll find nothing here, you move along." The door was slammed in her face. Georgia turned to see her children with their heads bowed sadly. "Don't worry, my little ones. We'll have better luck at the next house." Mrs. Turner lives at the next house. Her light was on, but she was not home. A large plastic bowl of candy sat in a stool with a sign reading, "Please take only one." Each carefully took one piece of candy and reassembled on the sidewalk. One of the children pulled at Georgia's cloak. "When do we get to the good stuff?" Georgia patted the child's head and smiled. Oh, I think we just might have some luck at the very next house. Georgia could hear the child's stomach rumbling. It won't be long now. Georgia and the children silently approached the next house. It looked very different this Halloween, as a new family had moved in that April and seemed to still have the Halloween spirit. There were giant fake cobwebs in the corners of the porch with plastic spiders thrown into them, and pumpkins were carved up along a wooden bench. It seemed like every light in the house was ablaze, and the song Monster Mash could be heard blaring from somewhere inside. There was no doubt now, Georgia thought, the kids were going to love this place. 2 little girls, dressed as Disney princesses, were walking a little farther ahead of Georgia's group, and they approached the house first. A lady dressed as a bumblebee opened the door to the call of "Trick or treat" and handed each girl a full-size Snickers bar. Georgia could hear a chorus of stomachs growling now. As the princesses skipped away, Georgia urged her 10 children to approach. The bee lady had already closed the door, so Georgia rang the bell. The door was opened, but it wasn't the bee lady. It was a pleasant-looking plump fellow dressed like an old English judge, complete with powdered wig. "Honey, come look. It's the Grim Reaper and her skeleton crew." Georgia heard the man's wife call back from somewhere behind him, "Oh, bring them in, I want to see." They were ushered one by one into the house. Georgia closed the door behind them. She pulled back the hood of her cloak and smiled. The wife came running around the corner, camera at the ready. "Oh, look at the scary little Her smile faded. The camera fell to the floor. The children had taken off their skull masks, revealing 10 hideous, misshapen, grinning faces with rows and rows of razor-sharp teeth. Their dead, clouded eyes narrowed to slits, and they moved as one toward their victims. Georgia held up a hand. What do we say? Trick or treat.
See that hillside? That was my grandfather's homestead. And that hill over there, my father's. Everything from hill to hill is mine. I own this valley. I own this town.
Mama says men can't make you happy. She also says their money can.
My father and his father before him were all jewelers. I come from a long line of gifted jewelers. I came to this town to be a jeweler here. I am not sure why I stopped this wagon in town. I guess it smelled like money. Little did I know, it was only one man's money. So in that man, I made a customer.
A rich man, a man of power, has the best of everything. Best house, best horse, best saddle. It just followed that I had to make Victoria my wife. She was the best. Everyone wanted her.
Jedediah Hollingsworth could offer me a life of comfort, travel, and jewels. I could not find one reason not to be rich, so I married him.
My business here is not what you would call a success story. It's still alive. I thank God the rich Mr. Hollingsworth showers his wife with my jewelry.
I buy my wife many things. Trips, clothing. She likes the jewels the best. Yes, jewelry makes her sparkle.
It's a good life. I have been to Paris, New York, and Chicago. My husband gives gifts. He has a good many virtues. It's only human to be interested in the virtues of others.
Soon it was Mrs. Hollingsworth who came to help my business. It was all quite by accident. You see, one day I saw her in town. She was receiving a gift from a man who was not her husband. Then again, and another, and then once she saw that I had seen her.
It's our anniversary. The years move, but her beauty never fades. She still looks good on my arm. I need a gift for her. One that people will notice. A gift that shows everyone that she's still mine.
Mr. Hollingsworth came to my shop. He ordered a special necklace. The order was expensive. A few moments after he left, Mrs. Hollingsworth walked in the door. She had a gift for me. Some of her old jewels, a very generous gift. I knew then that she knew that I knew about the other man, and knew those jewels were to buy my silence.
A lady knows when to protect herself. A rich woman must pay a high price.
The necklace was finished, the pride of my talent. It was magnificent.
It cost a fortune, but it was just what I wanted.
I gladly took his money and wished him well, but then I said it. It must have been my conscience speaking. Keep an eye on your wife. She is a real beauty. Everyone can see that. She is noticed by many. He looked at me, expressionless for a moment. He turned and left.
The night of our anniversary, necklace in hand, I snuck up the windy staircase to surprise her. She was sitting at her vanity, smiling. She was reading something and smiling. I walked in. She hid it in the folds of her dress.
You startled me.
No, I surprised you. I put the necklace around her neck.
I love it. Oh, darling, it's magnificent. I need to see it in the hall mirror.
As she moved to the hall, the note fell from the fold of her dress. Even at the distance, I could see it was a love letter. A love letter not from me. I moved to the hall.
The necklace is brilliant. You have outdone yourself. I love it.
Who is this letter from? Who is this letter from? Who? My hands grabbed her from behind. I began to shake her.
Stop!
The newspaper said she fell down the stairs. The whole town went into a state of mourning. I was worried. I had lost my source of income. Mrs. Hollingsworth was put to rest in the family vault. Hollingsworth buried her there with the necklace, the beautiful, expensive necklace that I made. I saw no reason to let the necklace rot with her. She owed me. I made a decision to go to her vault and retrieve my jewels.
What? I cannot believe the nerve of some low-life scum. How dare they desecrate my wife's tomb? I know what I must do. You will pay. You will pay dearly.
I saw Mr. Hollingsworth from my shop window. He was running at me. My heart was pounding in my chest. How did he know?
Mr. Grubich, I want to talk with you.
I was frozen in my tracks. He looked crazed. He went on to tell me that his wife's vault had been broken into and they took the necklace. His necklace! He stood right before me and ordered that I make up a new one for her, an exact duplicate of the stolen one, so he could rebury it with her. When he left, he was still shaking. I polished the necklace, the one I took, and I sold it once more to Mr. Hollingsworth.
I picked up the copy I had made of the stolen necklace. I told everyone that I was putting it back in Victoria's grave. I was gonna get that son of a bitch. I rededicated my wife's grave. It was in the newspaper, and then I sat in the vault with my gun in my hand and I waited.
I could not let that necklace rot. I crept into her vault and moved to the casket. I heard something move.
What's that? Something startled me. I reached for my gun, but it slipped to the floor.
Mr. Hollingsworth!
It was the jeweler. I picked up a shovel. I killed him. I stood for a moment and just looked into his cold, dead eyes.
Stop the killing! Stop the killing! You are already damned, Jed! Your money can't save your soul.
Victoria! You're dead!
It was only a moment, and then
he was with us.
All of us.
Bound together forever.
By this necklace.
Won't you try it on?
Won't you take it?
How about you?
Madison Winston is the definition of privileged. She's well educated, cultured, graceful, and one of the most beautiful young women to ever grace the society columns of the East Coast. It was only 1 month ago that Madison's engagement was announced. She was to marry the love of her life, who just happened to be one of New York's most prominent young attorneys, from one of the most wealthiest families in America. Madison was feeling blessed beyond belief as she turned into the wooden drive leading up to the tastefully, well-appointed colonial-style estate that she had known from her childhood home. Madison grew up in the house. This is the home of her mother. Madison lost her father early in life and was raised as an only child to a powerful, perfection-demanding master of all social rules and etiquette, known for her grand parties and timeless beauty, Gwendolyn Winston. Madison parked her car and collected a garment bag from the trunk. She rushed up the front steps and flew into the entry hall. Madison was greeted warmly by her mother's housekeeper, Trina. Madison told Trina all the details of the exciting wedding plans and of how excited she was to be home for her special birthday party. Today was Madison's 25th birthday. There would be a very special party for her. This was her 25th birthday. For some unknown reason, this birthday had always been an important rite of passage, a tradition, one to be followed, not questioned. This was all fine with Madison. She would for the first time be the center of attention for one of her mother's legendary social receptions. Also, the love of her life was going to be there. And this was the occasion that her mother would bestow a treasured family heirloom to her and hopefully share the guarded family secrets surrounding them. Madison was excited. She loved her life and was thrilled for new beginnings. Gwendolyn Winston was sitting at her dressing table pondering the details for the night's festivities. She could hear the voices in the entry hall and knew that Madison had arrived. The 25th year of every daughter born to her lineage had always been a celebrated event. This had been the traditional time where the treasures are exchanged and gifts to secure the future of the young and insurance that the traditions of this family will continue. Gwendolyn pauses for a moment to take in the artifacts of her sitting room. It was once described to her as a room that could only be rivaled by the Smithsonian. A collection of art and beauty, some dating back over 300 years. Gwendolyn turned back to her dressing table and to her most prized possession, a wood-framed silver mirror and a small wooden jewel box, both dark with the patina of time. This was the day that tradition will force her to pass them on. Pass them on as it had been done generation to generation. Pass them on to youth and beauty. Gwendolyn stood up from the dressing table and moved to the balcony overlooking the front hall. She caught Madison's attention immediately. With the tone of a Grand Duchess, she warmly greeted her beautiful daughter, wishing her all the best on her special day. Then with a tone of loving immediacy, she directed her daughter to the dress for the reception and come directly to the sitting room for some final touches in her gift. Madison, without hesitation, flew up the grand staircase, passing her mother with a quick kiss on the cheek, and disappeared through the hallway that led to her childhood room. Gwendolyn paused for a moment to take in the essence of the beautiful image of youth and perfection her amazing daughter had grown into. Gwendolyn called down to Trina to instruct her that all was to be ready on time and the quartet was to begin playing at exactly the stroke of 7, so the music could be in the air to greet the arriving guests. Orders were given, and she knew from experience that the destiny of the final arrangement were safe in Trina's hands. Gwendolyn returned to her sitting room to await the arrival of her daughter. The gentle knock on the door sent a shiver of excitement through Gwendolyn. This was it. The gift was about to be given, and the party would indicate a new start for all. The door opened, and there stood Madison at her very loveliest. Gwendolyn instructed her to sit at the dressing table. This was the time that tradition mandated that she would receive her gifts, the prized possessions, and now they were to be passed to Madison. The beautiful young girl sat at the dressing table while her mother stood behind her making eye contact with her reflection. Madison asked her mother a question she had asked before, but always was told that she would be answered on her 25th birthday. The question was simple. The question was, how did this tradition start? And why is it so important to our family? Gwendolyn told Madison to open the jewelry box. When the lid was open, it revealed a beautiful solid gold comb. The top of the comb was encrusted with emeralds and the rubies of the deepest color she had ever seen. She thought to herself, this must be over 100 years old.
They belonged to an ancestor of theirs who lived in France and had a tragic end.
She was a beauty that many envied. Due to the hate and gossip of the French court, our ancestor was accused of witchcraft, placed in irons, and sentenced to be hung. She instructed her daughter to bring her comb to the execution. At the very moment the hangman put the noose around her neck, her daughter was to place the comb in her hair and make eye contact with her mother so she may take in her grace and beauty one last time while she lived. The daughter left France that day to start a new life, taking with her only this mirror and her mother's comb. That was her 25th birthday. Madison exclaimed that the story sounded sad and dark. Gwendolyn quickly pointed out it was life-confirming and noble in our history. Gwendolyn finished pinning her daughter's hair in preparation for the placement of the comb. She told her daughter that the best part of the gift was about to come. She told her daughter to look into the antique mirror and find her reflection. Madison moved closer to the mirror. It seemed cloudier than it was before. Look hard, her mother reminded. Madison felt odd. She strained once more, but there it was. But wait, it looked like her, but clearly it was not. She told her mother she didn't understand. Gwendolyn told her to remain calm and look deeper. When Madison looked again, the reflection in the mirror continued to swirl, and she could see that it was filled with images of beautiful young women from many time periods, like living portraits from the art museum. Who are they, she thought. Gwendolyn spoke the answer. They are your sisters. You will join them now. Then clearly Madison could see her own reflection. At that moment, Gwendolyn placed the comb into her daughter's hair. Both women jolted with the ring of the phone on the dressing table. Gwendolyn fell lifeless to the floor. Madison stood and answered the call from Trina. She informed her that the love of her life had arrived to the party and the music had begun. Madison told Trina that her mother was not feeling well and she'd be resting for a bit, and then she'd join the party later if she felt better. Madison wrapped the ancient mirror in protective cloth, stood, stepped over the body of Gwendolyn Winston, and moved to the door of the sitting room. Madison Winston was reborn and ready to face love and life, and looking forward to the next 25 years of regenerated youth. As she opened the door, she adjusted her gown and wondered to herself, what name would she give her daughter she would soon have? With the voice of a Grand Duchess, she greeted her guests from the balcony overlooking the entry hall.
When the cool, crisp air moves in and the leaves begin to fall, thoughts drift to the dark and scary things October brings. I have always liked the orange and black images of monsters, ghosts, and candy that comes with it, but each passing year, the exciting and fun part of the season is clouded by the memory of one October I experienced years ago. This is a story, a memory, an event filled with a shared nightmare, a ghost, and a fright that I've carried with me ever since. I grew up in a family that was very accepting of the supernatural. My mother proclaimed to be, well, she had psychic abilities, and so she filled her life with trance mediums, table tappings, and, the development of psychic powers. And growing up in such an environment, I developed a great interest in the field of psychology. I had just started my first year of college as a psychology major. My friend John, he was a high-energy, creative person who was fun and easy to spend time with. Well, one night on a whim, we decided, try one of my mother's Ouija boards. I had tried it before, but with little success. We sat at a table facing each other. We each set one hand lightly upon the moving letter indicator, the planchette. We evoked the spirits to join us by asking aloud if there was anyone who was there and wanted to talk. Well, there was a long pause of nothingness, and again we asked, is there anyone who wants to communicate? At first there was no response, but then there was a cool sensation that fell over the board. John and I locked eyes. I knew then that he had felt it too. Suddenly the planchette began to move, and it dragged our hands to the word yes. I asked John, did you do that? He shook his head. We asked, who was with us? Questions were asked and answers came by the jerky but strong movements of the planchette. Each letter was carefully transcribed to paper by John. We sat there for hours, illuminated only by candles. Message after message came, along with a marked chill that blanketed the room. Then, our visitor departed as suddenly as he had arrived. We were left with a long collection of single-word answers, run-on sentences, and a tale from a man who claimed to have been murdered. He was frantic to get help, not for him, but for his still-living daughter, a daughter who was in danger from the same woman who had killed him. He said this woman took his life in order to get possession of his daughter, who could then be indoctrinated into some satanic cult. John and I were equally stunned by the story and equally convinced that neither one of us had concocted the story in order to scare the other. We planned to attempt another session the following night. If nothing came of it, we'd pass it off as a fluke. I was exhausted. Shortly after John left, I fell into a deep sleep, and I dreamt I was walking through a dark forest on an overcast day. Deep in the shadows of the trees near the edge of a small clearing, I saw a small, dilapidated shed. The shed was overgrown with underbrush and ivy. There was a tiny window coated with mud. A chained, padlocked door rusted shut with time. I moved to the window and began scraping away the hazy film. Bit by bit, light filtered through the glass, revealing a strange, bulky shape on the floor of the shed. With each swipe of my hand, it became clearer, until suddenly I saw it clearly. I felt as if I were falling into the space. Inside an old, rusty wheelbarrow was a decayed corpse in a blue suit with bound wrists. Its grotesque, twisted expression of horror could be seen through the dusty remains of the clear plastic cleaner's bag tied over its head. I awoke with a scream just as I was able to take a calming breath. The jolt of my phone ringing shot through me. It was John. He had the same dream. And for the first time since the whole thing started, I was really afraid. The next night we met as planned. I could tell that John was as shaken up as I was. We sat in the same chairs, the same table using the same board, in the same dimly lit room. There was a noted heaviness in the air this time, and the chill came across the board much quicker than it had before. I evoked the spirits to join us. This time there was an immediacy to the planchette, yet it was calmer. It collided to each letter. It was a more rhythmic movement. The first word spelled warning. I asked if this was the same spirit we had been talking to it last time. A shiver ran down my spine. Evidently, the spirit had been with us last night. He had been in the room with us, but he was not the one using the board. He said it was the other. This other, he said, did not let him speak. More important, the spirit warned we were not to trust this other. I asked the spirit his name. Our hands were pushed from letter to letter. The chill deepened as we tried to decode the message. I'm the man from your dream. I need to warn you. Don't trust. The other is not to be trusted. The other only leads to death. Suddenly there was a noted shift to the movement of the planchette. It seemed, to return to the forceful, jerky motion as from the night before. And I asked the spirit, the man, if he was still there, and our hands were dragged to yes. And I asked, who is the other? No response, but with an explosion of force, the planchette slid across the board, spelling out, I need your help. I need your help for my daughter. Please help. I have secrets I can share with you. Secrets and power I can share. John pulled his hand away. This is wrong. This feels evil. I agreed. We backed away from the table. I told John I felt uneasy. It felt as though we were being toyed with. John was unsure he even wanted to continue, but I felt that perhaps we could test the spirit, ask it something verifiable. We took a moment to compose ourselves and set our intentions. Once more, we called for the spirits in the room to communicate. Once again, we felt the icy pressure hover over the board, and once again, we felt the planchette move, gliding in the familiar rhythmic pattern. It spelled out, you need to trust. was as though the spirit had been listening to our talk. For word after word flowed forth. Street names, mile markers, they began to appear. They were coming so fast it was hard to write them down. East here, west there. Drive 2 more miles. Wooden park signs and walking directions. Counting out paces like a pirate's map. And then, follow these instructions tomorrow so you can trust. The planchette darted to the goodbye with such velocity that it continued past the board, off the table, and crashed on the floor. Fueled by adrenaline, John and I carefully went over the last set of instructions. I found a map of the local area and pinpointed some of the street names from the message. Well, the directions given by the spirit seemed to lead in the direction of a large forested area that included some parks, hiking trails. It was a crazy idea. We were going to go follow directions into a forest given to us by a spirit who may or may not have wanted to harm us, or even take our souls. At least we waited until daylight. As daylight was only a few hours away, John camped out on my couch. I set an alarm, closed my eyes, and in what felt like seconds, we were greeting the hour of 7. The sky was gray. The vast forest soon loomed before us. Only twice did we dead end and have to look at the directions again. There was more truth in the directions themselves than in our interpretations of them. When we could no longer drive further, it was time to walk the paces laid out by the spirit. It was 50 paces north from the car, then 80 paces to the east along the path. Ahead of us, I could see a small clearing, and I hoped it was not the same one I had seen in my dreams. The last set of paces led us to a park sign, just, an ordinary wooden park sign that read, Picnic Area 9. When we looked around, we read and reread the directions, feeling fooled and a bit foolish. We walked back to the car. Well, we then went over the entire route, searching for a missed turn or a misread instruction, but no, nothing. A waste of time. Just an ordinary Park District Picnic Area 9 sign. I dropped John off at his place and drove home, exhausted. I fell across my bed, falling uneasily into a deep sleep, accompanied by images of dense forest, walking paths, and cryptic numbers. With a sudden jolt, like a scream, I awoke. It was my phone. It was John telling me over in excitement. I'd be terrified, I don't know. It was excited voice. Turn on the news. Well, I turned on the TV to find myself staring at a crime scene. I turned up the volume, and there had been a gruesome murder, stated the reporter. Multiple stab wounds, 1 man dead. The camera shifted to a bloody body at the foot of a wooden post. As the camera pulled back for a wider view, I felt my stomach sink. The post. The wooden post, Picnic Area 9. Goosebumps flooded my body just as they are doing right now as I'm telling you this. John and I had been there only hours before, led by either a dead man or a demon. But why? What did it prove? That moment marked the last time I tried the Ouija board, and the last time I listened to the directions from the dead. I carry that October night with me, and what I am reminded of when the cool, crisp air moves and the leaves begin to fall is that story. This is the dark and scary thing October brings.
Growing up with cats and dogs, I grew used to the sound of scratching on my door while I slept. Now that I'm alone, it's much more unsettling.
After working a hard day, I came home to see my boyfriend cradling our child. I don't know what was more frightening, seeing my dead boyfriend and our stillborn child, or knowing someone broke into our apartment and put them there.
There's nothing like the laughter of a baby, unless it's 1 a.m. and you live alone.
My husband is an undertaker, and we've always loved taking care of burying others' loved ones. I especially love sitting at the graveside, listening to them trying to get out.
I awoke to the sound of the baby monitor, crackling with a voice comforting my child. As I adjusted my position, my arm brushed against my husband, sleeping next to me.
You get home, tired after a long day of work, ready for a night alone. You reach for the light switch, but you realize the hand is already there.
She went upstairs to check on the sleeping toddler. The window was open. The bed was empty.
My husband woke me up last night to tell me there was an intruder in our house. He was murdered by an intruder 2 years ago.
I am a modern woman. Educated, married, children, career. I enjoy all aspects of my life. Most of the time. Have you ever had one of those days? I mean, one of those days. One of those days when it seems like every aspect of your life is pulling you in different directions.
I need you at that dinner, and for once, you need to be on time. For God's sake, you're my wife.
Mom, I need it now! Now, Mom, now!
Why can't I go? You said I could. Last week you said I could. Mom, all you care about is work.
And if that wasn't enough, my boss was in a mood.
How can you be so far behind in this project? Our museum fundraiser is the one thing I told you to make a priority. Time management, productivity, and professionalism is all I ask for.
The day was out of control, and it just got worse from there.
I need
be
you.
so
You're
irresponsible.
for
What I
once.
need.
You need to be on time.
The phone rang. It cut through my thoughts like a knife. Hello?
Hello? Is that really you? It's been too long. I've been thinking. The old days back in grad school. I've been thinking a lot about you. You know who this is, right?
I knew that voice in an instant. It was her, a woman I once called friend. A woman who turned on me in grad school. We haven't spoken in years. I thought we never would. She was petty, jealous, and openly hated me.
Yes, it's me. Surprised? Well, I was out on a dig. I still do a great deal of field work. I understand you work at the museum now. Well, I thought of you. You used to love all those pagan ritualistic artifacts.
I did my thesis work on them.
Well, I came across this artifact, and I thought you should have it. I had it sent out to you. It should have arrived by now.
And there it was, right on my desk. A small blue box. I opened it. Inside was a casting stone.
A casting stone.
Casting stone.
It's eons old and said to be very powerful. I had one, used it as a paperweight, but this one was for you.
I had seen ones like this in graduate school. Ancient witches used it at the pentacle of the pentagram while casting powerful spells. It's beautiful.
They say if you meditate with them, they make great stress reducers. Some even say they can grant wishes.
This is very thoughtful and such a surprise. To tell you the truth, I thought you didn't like me very much.
Well, all that should be behind us. I am older now and not as mean. Accept this gift as an apology for the past.
I did. The day went on, the stress was back, and it just got worse.
Can you be so irresponsible?
What I
need.
Stop! I took the casting stone and held it firmly in my hand. If there is an ounce of power in this stone, bring me calm. Bring me peace. It seemed like only moments when the call started.
I'm calling to inform you that your husband fell critically ill this afternoon. He passed in transit to the emergency room.
My husband had had a heart attack at work.
It was unavoidable. The truck lost control and pushed the school bus into the concrete pylon. It's a tragedy. 12 children were killed. I'm so sorry.
My children were killed in a bus accident on the way home from school.
She seemed fine. She just slumped over. Not a sound, not a word. She just passed away.
The museum called, and my boss had had an aneurysm in her office.
She seemed fine. She just slumped over. Not a sound, not a word.
Stop! Enough! It was quiet now. I stood alone in my living room. Just stood there, looking at the empty room. Just there, in the quiet. The sound of the phone ringing shot through every fiber of my being. It was her.
It's me. Did it work? I sense that it did. You know, the moment I felt my loss and the power of the casting stone set in, I thought of you. You see, I have never stopped hating you. I wanted you to taste the power of the casting stone. Are you there? You don't have to thank me. Just enjoy the quiet your life has become.
I hung up the phone. Put the casting stone back in the blue box. Sealed it. Addressed a new label and walked it to the post office. You see, I have a few people from my past who deserve the gift of quiet. Some of you are watching this tonight. Check your mail in the morning. You may find a small blue box with an ancient casting stone meant for you.
We don't really remember when Benjamin first showed up on our doorstep. We don't know how old he is or even to whom he once belonged. Just one day, there he was. He had such a sweet face and was so small and adorable. Well, we simply couldn't leave him out there. So we took him in. It didn't take long for us to notice that Benjamin had some odd habits. For example, sometimes he would leave, he would be gone for days and nobody knew where he went. Another house, maybe? You know, who knew how long he'd been out on his own? Maybe it was just a habit. In any case, he always came back to our home. Sometimes he would seem quite content to lay on my daughter's lap, but other times he would appear cold and distant. He started to develop an annoying habit of sitting on the floor while we were eating dinner and staring at us. Staring, that wide-eyed, unblinking, fixed stare. My daughter tried to give him some of her vegetables, but I firmly asserted that Benjamin was not to be fed from the table. It wasn't right. But other than these few quirks, we really had no trouble with Benjamin. Then late one evening, my husband came home from bowling with some friends, and he found Benjamin in our bedroom. He was sitting near the head of the bed, watching me sleep. And not with any casual curiosity, mind you, but watching. Worse, his face was mere inches from my own. My husband found this a little unsettling, to say the least, and he picked up Benjamin, I thought a little roughly, and put him in the living room. The next morning, my husband told me what happened, and he added, "I think I heard him growl at me." We began to view Benjamin with a little more suspicion after that. I tried searching for his owner, both locally and online too, but I got nowhere. Somewhere inside of me, an uncomfortable feeling was growing. I didn't like Benjamin anymore. I began to feel uneasy when my daughter played with him, though she was always very loving and gentle. There was a growing sense of dread gnawing at me, and often I found myself consumed with the thought of Benjamin in our home. I began to fear Benjamin. One cold, dreary, rainy afternoon, I was sitting at the kitchen table and typing an email to my sister when I heard the most god-awful, ear-shattering, spine-splintering shriek come from the living room. I shot off the chair, I sprinted down the hallway screaming my daughter's name. I rounded the corner of the living room and there he was, arched over the body of my little girl. I saw him, a mouthful of sharp teeth clamped over her delicate face. I saw the blood. There was so much. He tilted his head, slavering out of the corners of his mouth, and he looked at me with the most sinister expression. It looked as though he was smiling at me. I screamed with equal parts horror and fury, lunging at him with a ferociousness I didn't know I possessed. I grabbed him by the neck, still screaming with rage, and I twisted with almost an inhuman strength. I killed him! I killed him! He attacked my daughter, and I killed him. Wait, why are you looking at me that way? Why? You judge me? Oh my God. You don't get it, do you? Benjamin's not a dog. He's a doll.
It's showtime. Hey folks, welcome to my stage. I'm on the IVCC Fine Arts page. We're slowly marching towards the grave, so let's start on, the whole being dead thing. I'll see that you're serenaded. Happy we can be acquainted. I'm top dog after Don and David. They scare me to death. The whole being dead thing. Death can get a person stressed. We should have car paid way more dims. Now we're never gonna see them. I can show you what comes next, so don't be freaked. Stay in your seats. I'm on the living room stage live next week. So just relax, you'll be fine. Pour yourself a glass of wine and take a breath. Welcome to a show about death.
Excuse me. Of course you're trying to steal the show. This is a duet, remember?
Kid can't take a hint. Fine, you win this time, Deets. Do you hear that sound?
That beautiful sound.
That is the sound of clean white shorts turning brown, torture and pain, breaking a brain. A sound that says, I will never sleep well again.
The sound of a scream is music to me. A sound that says 15 years full-time therapy.
Trauma and fear, it sings in my ear. Ain't it the sweetest noise around? That beautiful. Yes, I hear that sound.
That beautiful sound. A sound that means no more condescending adults hanging around.
His will each moan adds up to death.
voices in my head kept singing, go to Seymour, talk to Seymour. I drank some tea, but gee, the feeling wasn't gone. Seymour, sweetheart, tell me, darling, what's been going on?
Hey, little lady, hello.
Who said that?
You're looking cute as can be.
Is somebody in there?
You're looking mighty sweet.
Seymour! Seymour!
No, it ain't Seymour, it's me.
Oh my
Your
God!
friendly Audrey, too. This plant is talking to you.
I don't believe it!
Believe it, baby, it talks.
Am I dreaming this?
No, when you ain't in Kansas, neither.
Something seems very wrong here.
Oh, relax and go with it, doll. Do me a favor, will you, sweetheart?
A favor?
I need some water. In the worst way. Look at my branches. I'm a goner, honey. Come on and give me a drink.
I don't know if I should!
Hey, little lady, be nice.
You just want water, right?
Sure do, I'll drink it straight.
Well, your branches are dry, you poor thing.
No glass, no ice.
I'll get the can.
Don't need no twist of a line.
Here we go.
And now it's supper time.
Seems a downright shame.
Shame?
Seems an awful waste. Such a nice plum frame. What's his name? Has, nor it can't be traced. Business needs a lift. Debts to be erased. Think of it as thrift, as a gift, if you catch my drift. Seems an awful waste. I mean, with the price of meat, what it is, when you get it, if you get it. Oh. Good, you got it. Take for instance Mrs. Mooney and her pie shop. Business never better, using only pussycats and toast. Now a pussy's good for maybe 6 or 7 at the most. And I'm sure they can't compare as far as taste.
Mrs. Lovett, what a charming notion,
Well, it
eminently
does
practical
seem a
and appropriate as always. Mrs. Lovett, how I did without you all these years, I'll never know.
Think about it, lots of other gentlemen will soon be coming for a shave. Won't they? Think
how
of
choice,
all them
how rare. What's the sound of the world out there?
What, Mr. Todd, what is that sound?
Those crunchy noises pervading the air.
Yes, Mr. Todd, yes, all around.
It's man devouring man, my dear.
And how are we to deny it here?
The intoxicating spell of the graveyard. Once a year, when the last leaf of autumn falls, we gather here to celebrate life and death. When you're an atom, you'll need to have a little moonlight. When you're an atom, you'll need to feel a little chill. You'll have to see the world in shades of gray. You have to put some poison in your day.
That's the way when you're an atom.
You'll need to have a sense of humor.
When you're an atom, you need to have a taste for death.
Who cares about the world outside and what it wants from you? When you're an atom, you do as atoms always do.
Excuse me, I'm waiting eternity for my solo.
Yeah, Dad, we're here too.
All right, family, all together now.
When you're an atom,
you gotta have a lot of passion. When you're
When you're
an
an
atom,
atom, you need to really love your wife.
several times a day.
You're happy when your toes are in the mud.
you smile a bit the moment you smell blood.
When you're an atom,
You need to grab a bow and arrow.
When you're adults,
You need a moment to explode. Just pour a potion
flip the switch.
and wait till things get hot.
When you're adults, you have to listen up. Hot. So keep your sunshine and keep your glee.
Country music in Tennessee. Keep your laughter and MTV.
And all will be alright. When you're an adult, you have a very special duty. When you're an adult, you're obligated to the clan. It's family first and family last.